cancel that out too.
Good evening. This is Dan Beiser for Monday Night Bible Study, and we are acclimating, as the term would be, for getting back to in-person study here at the house for the Kaiser Church. So those of you that are signing on, joining with us, is that welcome to you all. We're in Exodus chapter 20, and so we're going to try to negotiate in-person people here, as well as me address you all that are still online and try to do a balance of that. The thought of it troubles me, but we'll see what we can do. Okay. For those of you that come on, sign on, and you may have a question or interaction, you can post that there to the side. Georgie's on her phone at this time, so she can pick up on that. Plus, I get to see them when you post them on there. Hello, Charlene. Good to see you guys on. So we're trying to get back to gathering, and as I said yesterday, we set up to have this for this evening. That we was going to start gathering again, and then most people started canceling out. So we have a couple that are here, and so you'll hear other voices. Emma's anxious to get back to put her 2 cents in, and so good evening to each. Julie, Pam, good to have you guys with us, and so we've got you guys signing on, and so let's. Go ahead, and I want to share just a couple announcements and updates, and then we'll get to Exodus 20, where we're in the last half of the Ten Commandments. So over these last weeks and months that we've been apart, I've tried to maintain this just for the sake of moving forward. And Thursday night will probably be a pre-recorded hour of prayer, and I will try to get that where I can figure it out to upload it at 7 o'clock as well. If not, the YouTube will have it. It'll be on my YouTube channel where I can upload it. Facebook may not be as friendly for me to upload pre-recorded things, but YouTube has no problem with that. So check there if you don't see it on Facebook, okay? Sunday services, we're back for here. We had our first time that we was back inside, gathered yesterday here at Kaiser Church, Fox's Hollow. We've been gathering for the last couple months. Cases had gone down both counties, but today I saw where Mineral County was back up. So we're going to have to wait and watch on that to see how the cases go with that. And again, people testing positive is one thing, but having symptoms and is another thing. And all the schools are now being impacted. So I'm pretty sure is that the schools will be shut down here within the next 2 weeks. So probably by the 1st of October is that all the schools will be virtual, and we'll have to see how the mandates go with that. Okay. All right. Any questions? Anything that you've had or discussing in your minds that you wanted to ask to get back underway? I always give that opportunity.
I don't see any online.
Okay. All right. So Exodus chapter 20, we're covering the last half of the commandments. We covered through the first 4 commandments, which again is the direct relationship between God and man. And then the 5th commandment, which we kind of set aside, which again is parents and honoring your father and mother in obedience, what we call for that. Then the 6 through 10 we do is the relationship of men to men. And so that's where we're going to cover several of those here tonight, the 6, 7, and 8 at least. And then 9 and 10 we'll probably hold off till next week with that. So do I need to put you guys on the spot? You've had 5 months to memorize all 10 commandments. So you got those in line and ready to go? Philip, you got those? Anybody online have all 10 commandments memorized? I had one who wanted to do a cheat sheet on the side of a coffee cup. Jackie wanted to do that so she could have it on that. Anybody have it memorized that you want to share? Say, yeah, I've got them all memorized. I gave a ton of homework yesterday over at Fox's Hollow, so we can add to that. You should have the 10 plagues in order from the early chapters of Exodus that we covered, and you should have the 10 commandments memorized in order. So if you haven't got those, as we conclude chapter 20, do so, because we're going to move from Exodus chapter 20. We're going to go over to the New Testament, more than likely the Gospel of John. So you can go ahead and start pre-reading that before we get there. But we're going to be a couple more weeks definitely for Exodus chapter 20. So let's go to verse 13, 14, and 15. We'll just read 17 as the end of the Ten Commandments, and then it breaks away from that. Verse 13, thou shalt not kill. 14, thou shalt not commit adultery. 15, thou shalt not steal. 16, thou shalt not bear false witness against your neighbor. 17, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, nor covet his neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. So, as I've expressed over the weeks as we've come through those, usually those we shorten them. And so we say, don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, and don't covet, desiring other people's things with that. So we want to pick up 13 through 15 tonight, as I expressed, and we'll try to work down through this. Again, the second parallel that you have of the Ten Commandments is found over in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 5. I won't ask that if you already knew that. I'll just tell you and that assume that you don't. Okay. Jackie's online and she does have her cheat sheet.
Yes.
Jackie, you do or you don't? I was going to use my cheat. Oh, okay.
Uh,
Julie, good on the names. So keep working towards those. There'll be a test at the end of the week.
We're gonna have to pat Jackie down next
And
week.
Linda is working on memorizing Psalm 119. All right. I'll give you a week. Hey, I'll be kind. I'll give it to the end of September on that one. So Linda, you have to the end. You have till October the 1st to memorize Psalm 119. All right. All right. So let's get to this. Exodus 20, Deuteronomy chapter 5 is two expressions of the Ten Commandments. Jesus uses this in numerous places as we go through this, and I wanted to give you this in Matthew chapter 15 and in Mark chapter 7. It's the same. Two parts of the Gospels, but it's the same example of Christ speaking. And he addresses this. Again, we're looking at murder, we're looking at adultery, and we're looking at stealing. Okay? Now, again, when you go to the New Testament and Jesus begins to teach us the things that we are naturally brought up to say don't do, what we see in our society today being obliterated because thou shalt not kill, and you hear me address this as far as one of the epidemics of murder. Our homicide rates are off the chart. You see the shootings going on. The two police officers that were horribly shot while ambushed, and their lives, I think they are in stable condition now. But needless to say, murder, preciousness of life, is pretty much obliterated in our society today. And it's been an erosion of that. It's, again, years ago in our lifetime, we could say, and I'm sitting here with two older ladies that probably have more years and experience on this. It didn't used to be this way. I mean, although that there was murders and although that that was something, it was a rare thing every 6 months, every year that there would be in this rural area, there would be something like that take place, and it would shake society. It would shake homes. It would bother people when they would hear it. And now it's become so commonplace that the numbers, again, reaching epidemic proportions, thousands that we're seeing this happen. People are getting used to it.
We're desensitized. We're so accepting of it.
Again, people are talking here, so I don't know if you can pick up on that. Georgie just made the comment, we're desensitized in our society, and that's true. And again, that could be movies, but it comes into so many different venues with how this has happened. Abortion, where again, all of us that are pretty much in this gathering are in the same mind and same heart with this, is that's a life. That baby inside that womb is a life. And when a woman aborts it, then it's murder, it's killing. And our society, like we said, not thousands, not tens of thousands, not even hundreds of thousands, millions. An entire generation, 60 million, has been, again, for our population, 330 million. That's like one quarter, like 1/5 of our society. That's already existence today. That has been murdered. And God, as we've talked about, thou shalt not kill. You walk through the scriptures and you see the lessons that Christ teaches us, the scriptures teach us about the rights and the wrongs of this. And so as we go through it, you see again, you should know, which again, if we was given the quiz here, Maggie, you want me to put you on the spot? No. The first murder in the Bible.
Cain.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Cain killing Abel in this. Now remember what God said to Cain. Where he asked him, he said, "Where is your brother?" Now, as you go through this scripture, and I did this, had this this morning in my writings and studies in Ezekiel, God asking questions. We ask questions because we don't know the answers. God asked questions to draw the answers out. And so God asked Cain, already knowing what had taken place, of where is your brother? And when he says, am I my brother's keeper? God answers him with the verification of this, is that Abel's blood was crying out to him from the ground. Now imagine that, 60 million babies, blood crying out to the ground for God to give vengeance for that. And you see that's part of the judgments. When people are saying, why all the wildfires out west? Why the hurricanes down in Louisiana and the Gulf Coast with the flooding and disasters? Why the drug epidemic? Why the LGBT advancing? Why this abuse to children? And all these other things are happening. When you ask why, you go back to these 10 commandments and you see just how we're breaking them. And that when you break them, that there's a penalty, there's a punishment. And so God is answering that. The blood is crying out to me for vengeance, and I'm going to answer it at some point. You go through the scriptures. You see where David slew the enemy, Philistines. He took Goliath's head off. He was celebrated. And yet when he killed Bathsheba's husband because of the adulterous affair, that was murder. And so you have that, again, understanding in the Old Testament where people talk about two separate gods, which is erroneous. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's the same God of the Old Testament as the New Testament. And people would say, well, then why did God say don't kill what he sent Israelites in to kill in that? And again, it's the vengeance of God's retribution that he's recompensing upon them for all the evils that they have done. It is appointed unto men, again, the wages of sin is death. And then once to die, and then the judgment for that. And so death comes for this from God, that he gives us life and he takes that life. And so what we do with that life is so that we can be consistent with him. But when you see in the scriptures these things that are unfolding, and you know the difference between defense of protecting yourself, or the enemy has come to cause harm, like David taking Goliath's head off, versus someone that takes matters into their own hands, like David did when he took Uzziah's life in that. And so you see this, that again, it is the difference between that which is right and that which is wrong. And so you have that which is legal and that which is illegal in this. So someone that would break into my home if I was to defend my family and I was to take their life. Again, this is a struggle because some people go to the complete opposite of that, saying, well, I would never raise my hand. I'm a pacifist. I would never defend myself, and I would never defend anybody else. Some people are in the Christian church are like that. But others are saying, no, if I am threatened, I will respond. Compared to those that we see out on the streets today, that taking matters into their own hands, vigilante groups, as well as the looters and the protesters and all that, where, again, there is no law. And there is no rights or wrongs. It's just every man did that which was right in his own eyes. And so this is the danger of going against the commandments that God had given to the children of Israel. So consistency from the 10 commandments that God gave to Israel that they were supposed to keep. Now over in Matthew chapter 15 and Mark chapter 7, is that Jesus speaks out of the heart proceeds these things. And part of most of these that we're talking about here tonight, murder, adultery, and stealing, that Christ mentions that there. And we know that over in Revelation chapter 22, he says, a murderer shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. An adulterer shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. A liar shall not enter in. A thief will not enter in. And so these last 5 commandments that God had given to the children of Israel are in place as rights and wrongs for deeds that ought not be done, nor to be considered, where Christ is condemning it. Out of an evil heart proceeds these things. And so the evil that we see happening in the news headlines today, thou shalt not kill, and life is not precious, and it's not protected, and anything goes, and it's a very selfish, choice, and that's what we're living in the midst of this. So be very cautious again when we're talking about looking at this society with what's going on. That again, do not look at the superficial. The superficial is what I'm talking about, is that where people want to justify what they did or why they did things. Again, you stay true to what the scriptures say on that, and then you go to the cause of why they did that. Out of the heart proceeds these things. And in the Thursday night hour of prayer over these last months, I've been pretty adamant. You don't just pray, let all the shootings and the murders stop and the warfare on the streets stop. You go to the root cause of this, and that's in the heart. The mind and the heart is what's causing all this. The conscience is seared, and the hearts are hard. And so they can do these things without conviction on that. And so this is a part of that I'm worried about, because again, where God says in Romans 1, where he says, I'm giving them over to reprobate minds, so that they can do anything that they want and have no conscience or conviction about that. And that's where we're getting to with this, because they're justifying what they're doing as thinking in their own minds it's okay, when again, it's a breaking of the law with that. The second one that we want to look at here for this evening is the committing adultery. And again, we want to walk through scripture where we see this take place, and the danger of this, because again of the erosion of marriage. So again, life, it's not precious. It's easily taken in this society. Bloodshed is all over the nation. The blood's crying out to God, from the abortions and the homicides, the suicides, the murder-suicides. And again, the target is because the minds and the hearts are evil, that you pray against that. And here's the potential. And I do take this from Dad, is that Dad said anybody that's lost is capable of doing anything. And I believe that with all my heart. If there is a person that is not saved, born again, and we have that promise, according to James, now unto him that is able to keep you from doing this. Praise God for that. Because I know many a times in my flesh, had I been let loose, I would have been guilty of murder. And so again, Christ not only speaking out of the heart and the thoughts of saying that, of acting on it, but also just the intent of doing it. If you've thought it, you've done it. Now, he doesn't mention that so much with murder, as we have that old phrase, if looks could kill. But the idea is that in your mind, you've already put it into place. And that Satan only it's like an ember. You only got to blow on a little bit before you get a flame. And that's all Satan wants. Put the thought there, and he'll do the rest, to stir and to stoke, to get you to act on that. And I wonder how many times, again, suicides, it just doesn't come up overnight. It just doesn't happen in an instant. It is a duration of time, of thought, the battle. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to consider this. And every time there's something that pushes them to that they act on that. And then they follows through with it at some point. And that's, once done, you can't go back and undo it. And that's the sorrow of that. So you can be forgiven of murder. And that's, again, that we know David, he fell before when Nathan the prophet came to him after he had murdered Bathsheba's husband, and he killed him. He fell before God when Nathan said, thou art the man. And he confessed, and he said, God has forgiven you. and he's not going to kill you. And so again, you look at that of the punishment. If you killed somebody, then you lost your life for that. Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, life for life was the mandate that went through that. But again, David killed, but he wasn't capital punishment executed with that. So the second one there with committing adultery, where again I was talking about David, because again what we see in this society today, what constitutes adultery, and then what you look at from society, families, what we hear, what we know is going on. You look at the political figures, you look at the athletes, you look at the movie stars. Deed honest, you can't even keep up with who's with who in this day and age. Whereas again, years ago, it was a stable relationship. It was one, a man leaves his father and mother, joins himself to his wife, and those two are one till death do them part. That's the mandate. But in this thing of adultery, where in our society, especially this younger generation coming up, all that's gone. And so it becomes this anyone and everyone of the practice of these young people, especially on these colleges and university campuses. They have a game that they practice of how many people that they can sleep with and commit not adultery, but fornication with that. And even though this is talking about, it says, thou shalt not commit adultery, which again, the definition of this immoral sin, adultery is of a married couple, individual, going outside of the relationships with a sexual relationship with someone else. Fornication is those who are not married yet. And that's the reason that we usually say the younger generation in high school and college, that they commit sexual immorality with that. And so you see these sins again of the flesh between persons that they act on this. And then you go over into the New Testament and you see the epistles of Paul. You see Christ speaking against this, and the actions that Christ takes and the actions that Paul takes, where he mandates again reinstituting this seventh commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. Let me play question and answer here with the group. Tell me the example where Christ dealt with adultery in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Where did Christ deal with adultery? You all can answer silently online.
The woman that said she had 5 husbands.
Okay. One of them is John chapter 4, where the woman at the well is that Jesus speaking to that woman, and he said, go get your husband. And she said, I don't have a husband. And Jesus, of course, being omniscient, knows all things. He said, you're right. You don't have a husband. You've had 5 husbands. And the one you're with now is not your husband. So she was in an illicit relationship with that one. So another example, Jesus dealing with adultery in the New Testament.
Told the men not to throw stones at her whenever he's writing in the
Okay.
sand.
So again, we come back to this. The Pharisees had the people that was there. Okay, some of you are getting it there. And the woman that was taken in adultery. And so she was brought and thrown down before Christ on that and said, the law tells us is that she ought to die. Well, the law says is that both of them were supposed to die, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So where was the man? They brought the woman, but they didn't bring the man. It takes 2 to tango. So bring both of them and again, stone them, kill them, remove the sin from that. And Jesus refused to answer them. So finally, when they kept pushing it, you know the answer. Some of you, I think, had said that. He said, you who are without sin, cast the first stone. So again, when Christ looks at her, what does he say to her?
Go and sin no more.
Go and sin no more. Amazing that most times when I ask that, what did Jesus say to her? Most people that don't know the scriptures, they answer that and they say, don't do that again. That's not what he said. Try to do better. No. Go and sin no more. It is the objective of us to understand these are not just do's and don'ts. Thou shalt not. This isn't about a checklist. This is about maintaining holiness, sanctification, being right with God and being right with men. And so in this where he talks about murder, which again is out of anger, is out of vengeance, is out of wrath, is out of something selfish. Adultery, which is, again, we're talking about root sins of anger, lust, pride. And so here in this, where the adultery takes place, is that, again, the lust is in full throttle, where we saw it with David. He looked at Bathsheba bathing and he lusted after and he acted on it. He did not withdraw from that. When you go over to Galatians chapter 5, I almost lost that, the fruits of the Spirit. There are, I think, 17 fruits of the flesh there in the midst of that, and 9 fruits of the Spirit. There's your next assignment for homework. Memorize the fruits of the flesh and the fruits of the Spirit. Got them? No? So you got them? Oh,
Close.
okay.
I'm not going to answer them right now. You're not.
The first fruits of the flesh that Paul writes there in Galatians, that he says, is that, again, adultery, and what we're looking at here, the sexual deviance in our society, like what California just passed, where they wanted to lessen the criminal activity against those of underage sexual activity. So again, laws that are in place to protect children, they're moving now to undo all of that. You've seen this several places. You've seen this in several state legislatures. You've seen several judicial edicts. The pedophiles are pushing this agenda because that's what they want.
And Hollywood is answering.
And
Netflix has that movie that they've been discussing called Cuties. I haven't researched it, but it's about 9, 10, 11-year-old girls doing provocative sexual things. And again, that's open for any of our kids to get on if they, have access to find a TV show and see. It's just so vulgar.
so the movies and, again, social media, where this has taken place and happening, that might intensify, but this has been long before internet. This has been going on. This is clear back here where we're talking about Old Testament, New Testament civilizations, what the Roman Empire did. This isn't something new just to our society. This has always been a law. And again, it goes back to this. And this is really what I'm trying to get you to understand for the 10 Commandments. Why do people do these things? It's not just simply because they don't know better. It's not simply because they weren't raised right or they don't have instruction. That might contribute to it, and that might aid them in that. It is in the minds and the hearts of lost men that they're doing these things. And so committing adultery, again, where marriage is not taught what biblical marriage is, what God intends and what God honors, it is what society is dictating about. Do whatever you want to do. Just be happy. And you hear that so often from people in the church and out of the church. Just do whatever feels good. Just be happy. And that's never in the scripture. That's humanism. That's that thing that I hate more than anything that you hear me pray against so often in our prayer times. Humanism. Me, myself, and I. What do I want to do? What do I think? Doesn't matter what you think. Doesn't matter what you want to do. It only matters what God says. And so again, where he says don't kill someone and don't commit adultery, and the examples that are given in scriptures, we have to know these things about right and wrong. And again, we come back to this, where the intent, where Jesus said, if you've looked on a woman in the Sermon on the Mount of Matthew chapter 5, if you've looked on a woman and lusted after it, you've already committed adultery. You never followed through with it. You thought about it. And so the intent always has to be guarded of our thoughts and our reactions. And again, prayer, safeguard me. Pray one for another. Safeguard each of us in our intent. Why do we do what we do? And Satan is just looking for an inroad. And again, we contribute to that when we allow access, like the Netflix and those things, that opens up a portal to those that are there. And as I've said so often in our talks and discussions, a person's innocence and being naive, where I would say decades ago, for me, I was teenager, upper teens, innocent, naive. I didn't know nothing in that. But in this day and age, we're talking 3 and 4 year olds that their innocence and their being naive is gone in that. The things that they've seen, experienced, the 70 some kids that they rescued in Ohio, Indiana, and Georgia last week. They were, again, the cases were, social work and that kind of stuff. It wasn't all just sex trafficking, but there were conditions there were not. They were endangered, and so they pulled them out of there. But we have enough stories and enough accounts of teachers in school with students.
Well, let's just talk about parenting our own 16-year-old, soon to be 17-year-old. It's a nightmare. You have to watch what social media. I mean, what I always refer to the older kids and the younger kids, and sometimes I'll say, "Oh, it was easier with these." But as far as monitoring, we didn't have to monitor the social media. We just had to know their friend group and what they were where they were going, and who they were running with. Now it's a whole new ball game. I personally have had a couple episodes with my grandchildren where we've been out in public and we've been followed in the store by people, where I came out terrified after grabbing them and getting them in the car and making sure they were safe. So I even worry about sending my 16-year-old where I used to go to the mall with a group of friends, because safety is not there anymore. It's not, you have to worry about all these things where before you didn't. With having to have them exposed to the sin that's so easily there.
Where they're teaching sin in schools.
Yes.
I mean, they are.
Yeah.
I see where West Virginia, I just saw it tonight, they want to do a program enlightening them on the Black Lives Matter, plus how to deal gracefully with the LB, whatever those initials are, all lumped together in one. I don't think one has anything to do with the other, but they want
Well, they're wanting
everybody
to
to-
accept all those kind of people.
but that's what I'm saying, that's what they're doing. Justice announced that today.
Yeah.
Up at university. They want to do that.
Well, can you imagine they're
And
trying
they
to
want
pass
students
for
to teach it.
16-year-olds in California to vote? 16-year-olds. I said, they don't know anything yet.
Well, they want them so they can move forward with that.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, safeguard with programs on the computers, right? That's what someone's sharing here on that. So again, what we're dealing with and working on in the midst of this murder, killing, committing adultery, and all that, the root causes that comes out of that with anger and hate for killing. And for adultery, it's the lust, and again, the fruits of the flesh, lasciviousness, concupiscence, which again, I bet you didn't use either one of those words in the last month, did you?
No.
But those are the sins, the fruits of the flesh that we're supposed to be confessing and to make sure that we have no part of. Because again, Paul's very, very clear on this when he says that. And those that do such things shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. And so the fruits of the flesh must be known, which again, they're not known. And so again, how do you confess what you don't know? So we have to understand these things in context, that when we say thou shalt not commit adultery, we're also saying thou shalt not commit fornication, thou shalt not lust, thou shalt not flirt and play and do the other things that lead to that. And if you do, you're guilty. Confess, repent, and go on in the right relationship that God always intended, and not the ways of the world in this. And we see that happening. Again, perfect example. Jerry Falwell's son down at Liberty. Why he had to resign, because both of him and his wife were doing this. Again, to her defense was, again, defending what she was doing. No, it's not just having an affair. It's not just messing around, is the terms I think that she was using. It's adultery. And never to own up to that. I've sinned, again, David, when he was condemned, I have sinned against heaven. I've sinned against you, God. Psalm 51, where he writes that out. You don't hear that today. And so the confession, fornication, You don't hear it confessed in the churches among the young people, or those that had done it and never really said, well, we had sex before marriage, but that's okay because we got married. No, it's fornication. And so the confession of that has to take place. And for most, it never does in this. So these are dealing with things, again, throughout scriptures that is affecting our relationship with God and affecting our relationship with one another. And then you get into this where it becomes generational sin. Well, mom and dad did it. Well, my uncles and aunts did it. And so that becomes, again, a means of just permitting it or allowance of that. And again, I go back to that, which I detest so much, enablers of saying it's okay. It's okay. Everybody else is doing it. It's not okay. And I left off with that where I was talking about for the teachers and the students with what we see of the damage that's being done there. And then you get into the church. Pastors, youth ministers, and again, the numbers are just continuing to come out for those that have at church camps, Sunday school classes. About once a month, you'll see a report headline in the news of someone has been charged, lawsuits have been given or issued, and the response of how the church is dealing with it has been pretty pathetic. That's added to it. Because again, you can't sweep things under the rug. And so again, that's one of the things that Liberty University is going to have to deal with for what took place there. You can't just wipe it away and move on. It's got to be dealt with, and you got to deal with it the biblical way in that. And so that again has to be taught and learned for that same thing. All right, so let's conclude for this evening then on this last one. I wanted to try to get these three done and then spend time next week on 9 and 10. The third one, verse 15, number 8, the commandment, thou shalt not steal. And so again, you can start with the very basics of things, go back into Genesis. Give me an example in Genesis where someone stole something.
Birthright. Esau.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just assumed everybody would know.
They love to just drop a word and not say anything else. And I'm supposed to finish it off for Jacob stole the birthright from Esau, and so again, thievery with that. Well, again, I'm trying to navigate between you all and this.
All right.
So.
All right.
And it's very difficult.
We
I want you to know that this is difficult.
Yeah, we have to have more Bible study.
Yeah, we need to practice like we've never done this before.
My audience doesn't know how to respond. I'm not getting a lot from you all.
Somebody stole something gold and sit on it. I forget who that was.
Yeah, Rachel.
Okay.
Rachel. I was
Right.
thinking Leah.
Rachel stole Laban's gods, false gods, his idols, and put them in and sat on them and said that after the custom of women, she couldn't get up.
She lied too.
She lied. So again, but that's next week. So we'll pick back up with that. Stealing and lying. But isn't it amazing how those two run parallel?
They do.
If you're caught stealing, did you take that? No. We deny in the midst of this. And so again, we come back to this. Why? Why is it that it's so associated with evil? And again, not just as that, again, smack on the hand saying, well, everybody stole or everybody's told a lie. And the response to that is that that's giving permission to do it. And that's not the response that we're supposed to have. These things ought not to be named among you is the mandate. So as Christ was, Christians to be Christ-like. Did Christ steal? Did Christ lie? You say, well, no. Well, then neither are we. And it's about keeping these commandments that, again, where God is saying, thou shalt not do this. This isn't an option or a choice. And so it's not just about the physical possessions where you walk in the store and say, pick up a candy bar and put it in my pocket and go on. You know, we teach kids that when they've done that, to own up to that. And the right way to do it, they take it back in, they acknowledge, I took this, didn't pay for it, I'm in the wrong, and I'll deal with the consequences. And most of the time, when those kind of things have happened is that the manager or whatever says, don't let it happen again. And they're given grace.
And
Grace.
the parents don't buy it for them just because they repented.
Yeah.
A lot of parents will do that.
Yeah. And not teach them properly with that. So there are numerous things in the scriptures that you walk through and you see the stealing that takes place. But that again with Jacob is probably predominant for most of that.
Julie says the apple.
Julie, for the apple, are you talking about Eve eating of the apple with Adam and Eve? They didn't really steal it. They weren't supposed to look at it. They weren't supposed to touch it, and they weren't supposed to eat of it. So that was literally a taboo, not even to approach that tree. Matter of fact, I used that yesterday in Fox Hills Holland Sunday School, where again, you got hundreds of trees to choose from. Why? And to say one tree out of 100, to say don't go to that one. Again, how do you know that it's 100? And I'm just giving a figure. Okay, it doesn't say in the Bible how many fruit trees that there were, but one you're not supposed to touch. Why is it that one would be compelling to be drawn to? And it's much like anything of this world. That again, where we get to number 10 commandment, not to covet. People look at other things that they ought not be looking at, and they become envious and they become jealous, and the heart and the mind begins to allow for these things of saying, well, I deserve it. And you begin to argue with yourself, your conscience. And Satan, of course, throws gas on the fire to get you to break the commandment when you know, don't do it in this. Now, there are other things, again, just to conclude here real quick before we go to.
What about Joseph's coat? When the brothers took the coat of many colors off of him and dipped it with the blood and sent it back home saying he had been, was that considered thievery for stealing the coat? Or
Well, not really, because again, they used that as the means to
convince them of
convince
his
their
murder?
father, more so of lying, to Jacob on that. Is this your son's coat? In that the coat was destroyed because they had soaked it with blood and cut it up as if a wild animal had gotten to them. So they didn't really steal it of that. Now, again, physical things, that's one thing. Time. We steal time from God. This is a great battle for me. Again, birthdays here 2 days. So I look at years, decades. I look at time, and I look at what I've done with it, and I've looked at what I've stolen from God with that. We talk about tithing, 10%, where we use the Old Testament teaching babes in Christ of Christians of saying, give a 10% of your tithe to the Lord. And then again, we know that that's not New Testament teaching. New Testament is you give unto the Lord such as is needed with that. But your talents, your time, and your time, talents, and tithe, 3 T's, that is supposed to be given to the Lord with that. And so again, it's one thing to say, yeah, I gave my tithe and I'm using my talents for the Lord, but what about my time? And so again, 24 hours in a day, if it's 10%, then you owe the Lord 2 hours and 40 minutes every day. You say, well, how do I do that? Well, that's the reason we do an hour of prayer on Thursday night, to teach you how to pray an hour. You read 15, 20, 30 minutes in your Bible. Several of you here working on Psalm 119. It takes, for the most mornings that I've done in the last week, it's taken me 15 to 20 minutes to go through Psalm 119 by memorization, rehearsing it. Because again, I'm still hitting and missing. I'm like a bad spark plug in a car. It's missing at places where the mind ain't what it used to be. And no comments, Maggie.
I'm not saying a word.
Okay.
And he's getting older.
She loves to tell me I'm well stricken in age, and that's
Well,
part
you're
of that.
getting there.
Yeah, I am.
You did.
Emma says I'm catching her. So time, what have I done with it? Because we got to answer for it. What did you do with what I gave you? Intent. Why did I kill that person in my mind, my heart? Why did I take my hand and shed blood? Because I was angry? Because I hated them? Because it was impact on my life? Or was I defending myself? Adultery, Why did my eyes go there? Why did my mind go there? Why did my heart go there? Why did I give place to that? Knowing what it was going to cost me. And then stealing. What have I taken from the Lord? That which God entrusted us with, life and time. What did we do with it? Are we stealing it for ourselves? And again, to impart those things that we get to pass on for what the Lord intended for his name's sake with that. So it's not just about where you say, to conclude with this for this evening, Ananias and Sapphira over in the book of Acts, is that they lied about the tithe, but they had every ample opportunity that they could justify that and done it right, but they didn't. And again, you go back to this: why did they not do it? And why is it that stealing is born in the mind and the heart of people to commit such things? And it's the root sin of pride within people. And so you look at these things. Again, we're going to conclude with the last two of lying, which we've covered somewhat. Some of these other things as they run parallel, and coveting and that. And so we'll conclude with that next week on this. So I've got a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to go down through some of these prayer requests. Did you guys have anything?
Louise, pray for her, and Carol, they really need it. And for my sister, yeah, she's still under the weather. So,
Ginger and Billy.
Okay. They're mentioning requests here that we've got. It's on our minds and hearts, people that we know here in this community.
Fran has heart surgery coming up.
Fran Cuthbertson. Yeah.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
and I know this is a minor thing, but pray Amanda gets her things back that somebody stole.
there's nothing minor about
Yeah.
prayer.
You know, I mean, and it still shakes her up thinking somebody just broke in, you know. I'm just thankful she wasn't there when they did it. So.
Right.
It's a horrible feeling. I had been robbed before, and it's a horrible.
Yeah.
It's hard to get over.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't have
You
her
never feel
engagement ring
safe
on,
again.
and they took it, and I had gave her my engagement ring and my wedding band. They took that. She said that's really what bothered her, because I wanted her to have it. Now she don't have it either. So
Right. When things are lost. We see the things, another hurricane getting ready to hit tomorrow
mhm.
out west. I think the count was 35 for death. And then again, I don't know how much, I don't think they're able to even begin to estimate how much property and dollar tag to it of how much that'll be in the billions of dollars for all that's been. And again, it's not in any way, shape, or form on the downside yet. I think the one thing I got on this morning is that they said that there was 95 active wildfires and only 2 have been contained. That severity is pretty bad.
Carrie Swain for her soul, and for Julie has a mother at 93 has had a heart attack.
Okay.
Lynn's mother. Sorry.
Okay. Sue, Carl for surgery. Can you give us any more info? I don't, again, I know it's public, and then maybe you might want to private message me on that to let me know what's going on. Is that his other shoulder? So, Sue, if you can write on that, I appreciate that.
Sue's on there.
Mm-hmm.
Sue, yeah.
And Butch had loss of his
Yeah.
wife Dottie.
Okay.
Right.
Death.
And remember that little Joshua boy that that
Yes,
was under
sir.
there? Yeah. And Rory, he's doing really good. The baby that I've been praying for. I guess you have been too. And he's starting to walk with his brace on.
Yeah, it's been quite an answer and a miracle
Yes,
right
it
there
has
with
been.
that.
Yes.
Well, that's what even that Josh did coming along with that. So God is able, that's for sure.
And although struggling with cancer, I can think of so many names and so many that we have as far as
Well, and the coronavirus. I mean,
right.
there's people. I mean, I have friends that just found out their grandson had come to visit them, and he went back. They found out he had coronavirus. He brought it up there, and both of them are having health problems. So they don't know whether they're going to get it. But he was there for about a week.
Well, and that's the whole thing with this is that, again, it's not just about whether you've tested positive. It's about, again, the symptoms that you have, and not whether you're able to fight it off, but someone that isn't able to fight it off.
these are
You
his
might be
grandparents.
test positive
Yeah.
and never have any symptoms with it. But the person you pass it to, which again, like we said over in Allegheny County, the mother, since this thing broke in March, hadn't been anywhere,
Right.
but the daughter had been out, and she took it back to her mother,
Right.
and the mother died.
Mhm.
You can't dismiss these things. And when people say it's all because of the election and Trump and those kind of things, well, what do you do with the other 190 nations that are having this? India is getting obliterated right now with cases and deaths. Their numbers have been record setting in these last 7 days. So, South America, uh, Bolivia, Colombia, again, do you know your have geography test for you since I've already asked you about your homework. Um,
I wrote
South
that. I
America is
aced
being
it.
obliterated with those things. Um, okay. And then Europe is going through its second wave. France and Spain have had 5,000 cases. Israel is going to have a 3-week lockdown. Britain is getting ready to have another lockdown with that. Thank you, Sue, for posting that. I appreciate that info with that. Carl's broke 3 toes and had to have them reset for Wednesday. So, okay. That's right. God can take care of everything. He's able. So Ephesians chapter 3, now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we could ask or think. And so he is able. But the cause and the reasons of why things are happening, to go back to this as we've looked at in the book of Exodus, why these things are happening. It is the mind and the hearts, the fruits of the flesh that are being demonstrated openly, brazenly, without any restraint. And we haven't reached the climax yet either. And that's the scary of that. Um, I'm not getting into that, Elizabeth. There's reality of these things. And so these things that, again, that we're seeing in our nations and the things that we're seeing in the homes and on the streets, the headlines of what's going on, these are all signs of the times. You know, again, when you read, as I did here in Ezekiel this morning, God says, when I send these things, I bring these things to pass. Those are the reasons and the purposes of his design. So again, where's the church going to come out in this? Where's the second coming? And in the last days and events with that's going to be an issue and a matter as well. California, John MacArthur Grace Community Church, lawsuits threatened to be arrested for having church. The other church, I think it was North Valley Baptist, if I got the name right. I forgot the pastor's name, but they were being fined $10,000 for gathering. So those kind of things, which again we see in religious freedoms being attacked and all of that. So these things are upon us. And this, again, is some of the things that we've been sharing as we're readapting here for our gatherings and those kind of things. Grateful for those of you that signed on and following along with us. We're working through Exodus to get through chapter 20. We've been in Genesis and Exodus for
Oh, wow.
3 years.
several years walking through this for our group that gathers here at Kaiser.
For the slow group.
And that's just part of this that, again, I work methodically with that verse by verse and phrase by phrase. And not all of our, sometimes we got into question and answers and we didn't even get to the regular Bible study. And I enjoy that just as much as anything. So for those of you that are online, we're going to sign off and we're going to prepare for our dismissal here. And Thursday night, I will try to have the upload for the hour of prayer. And then Sunday services will do again in person and live stream as well. So good night and God bless.